All right, I've got a whole new selection of audio segments for you here entitled 15 Things You Need to Do to Prepare for 2016. I think that's the title. Let me find it. 15 Things You Must Do to Survive 2016 and Beyond. There, that's a better title. That's the one I had written down. Now, the first thing you need to do, which would be point zero actually because it's sort of ahead of the whole list, is you need to go watch the movie The Big Short. And this movie is an absolute must-see. You cannot avoid this movie. I mean, you must see it to understand what's coming. It's so crucial. It's the best film possibly of the decade. I mean, it is so good. It's just an absolute must-see. The education that you will get from this and understanding how the system is engineered to screw you and how banks and governments commit massive fraud to take your life savings and screw you as an investor and take your home and take everything from you and leave you homeless and destitute and bankrupt and depressed and medicated it is just such a powerful narrative in this movie. You've got to see it. And it's all true, by the way. Almost all true. 99% true. Or thereabouts. It's based on true events. Let's say for the housing bubble crash. Anyway, go watch this film, The Big Short. Now, if you've already seen it, I'm not going to give you any crazy spoilers here. After all, it's all about history. It already happened. But if you've seen it, you know that in the movie, the public that is invested in the homes and that carry, the pension funds, for example, that carry the debt of the CDOs, the bundled mortgage debts that banks sell off to other investors, all of these people have no idea that they have bought into a system that's going to collapse and ruin them. They've all been sold a bill of goods. So all these crappy mortgages were bundled together to create a new debt instrument that's given a new name and then a new AAA rating by Standard & Poor's. Or Moody's, or the other ratings institutions that are all frauds, by the way, total financial fraud, just complete, absolute economic corruption and fabrication at these ratings institutions. They're a total joke. So if you take enough crap and you combine it together, like D-rated debt, and if you combine it together, how does it make AAA rated? Well, it doesn't, but that's the rating they gave it, and that's what they sold off to the pension funds and the institutional investors and even many individual investors who were buying these up and thinking, well, gosh, we're going to get our money back. Everything's always been good with housing. How could that ever collapse? And the banks were selling this with all the confidence of, we're J.P. Morgan, we're Bear Stearns, we're Bank of America. We've never failed. We're still here. This is all good. Trust us. The takeaway from this is that when it's all about to hit the fan, you will not be warned. You will not be given a speech by Obama on national television the day before it all hits the fan. Obama's not going to get up there and say, well, today, I'm not going to try to impersonate Obama. He's not going to get up there and say, it's all going to hit the fan, prepare, get everything, go get your food and water, load up, lock and load your Glocks and Mossbergs and AR-15s. No, he's not going to be up there telling you that it's all coming down and prepare for martial law or quarantines or house arrest or shelter in place or National Guard troops going door to door, confiscating your weapons, leaving you defenseless against the gangs and the criminals, the rapists and violent muggers and shooters. No, he's not going to get up there and say that. He's not going to get up and say, oh, well, the food stamp system that provides money for 50 million Americans, well, we're going to stop funding that tomorrow because the government's run out of money. Good luck, everybody. No, he's not going to get up there and say that. And your bank is not going to tell you what's coming because your banker's totally clueless anyway. They have no idea. And even if they did, you think they're going to tell you? Come on. That's insider information. They're going to tell their three best buddies, and they're going to make a killing as the system collapses. The mainstream media is not going to tell you. They're all pro, go and put all your money in stocks. It's going to go up forever. That's not just CNBC, but CNN and MSNBC, Fox News, you name it. They're all cheerleaders for taking more money from suckers, basically. Dump your money into the stock market. They think stock markets always go up forever. And if they ever do go down, that's just a buying opportunity to get more stocks because they're going to keep going up forever after that. That's the way they think. So, from watching this movie, The Big Short, the takeaway is the system will never warn you when it's headed for collapse. You got that? Now, with that in mind, I want you to think about the system that you're living in right now. Because back in 2006, 2007, there were a few individuals, a few brilliant investors like Mark Baum, who saw, hey, this whole thing is a scam. This housing bubble is a total fraud. These people who are getting loans on their homes can't afford the loans. And when the variable interest rates spike up another quarter point, another half point, guess what? There's going to be a wave of defaults across the board here. These investment vehicles are total junk. They're going to collapse. They're going to be worthless. We're talking about a massive wave of defaults. So Mark Baum and others, a few others, saw this. Everybody told them they were crazy. Everybody said, you're nuts. They were up against the big banks. Bank of America, Bear Stearns, JP Morgan, Goldman Sachs. And the people at Goldman Sachs were just laughing their heads off. You think the housing debt is going to collapse? You're crazy. So they were laughed at and they were called insane. And literally they said their friends stopped talking to them. It impacted their social lives. They could not talk to friends anymore. They were ostracized from society, in essence. Almost couldn't keep their jobs. They were screamed at. They were pressured by everybody, even though they were right. And this is another huge takeaway from that film, The Big Short. If you are right because you understand the fundamentals of what's happening, the entire world can be wrong, but they don't know it yet. You got that? The entire world can be wrong, just as they were in 2008. The entire world was wrong. And it was these smart, nimble, informed individuals who were right about the coming collapse of the mortgage debt market. They were right. And those who benefited from it the most were the ones who stuck with the decision that they made after analyzing the economics and the numbers and making an informed decision, knowing that their decision was based on fundamental facts and economic laws that can never change. Meanwhile, all the banks who were wrong and all the crazy high-flying, stripper club investment banker types who were partying away and having a good time, they were operating on myths and false narratives and just feel-good vibes. Oh, yeah, it's so cool. Get on board. Everybody's making loans, man. Big bonus time. You don't need an income verification. It's called a ninja loan. Ninja. No income, no job. It's all right, man. And they thought they were going to get rich, and they thought this was the new system. They're all hip. So cool. Yeah, you got your new Mercedes Benz. You got your cool suit. You got your $5,000 a week cocaine habit and your gym membership. Yeah, you think you're so cool. But these people were, of course, morons. And they're now probably jobless, or they were for a while after that. A lot of people lost their jobs because they just went along with a system of total insanity. But this is the important point. When you know you're right, when you've done the research, when you've looked at the fundamentals and you've assessed it, don't let anybody tell you that you're crazy. Don't let the whole world tell you that you're crazy, because sometimes the entire world can be wrong. And right now, I'll share with you something from a personal level. I've looked at the world economy, the global debt system, and it is going to come crashing down. The whole world thinks that you and me who understand this, the whole world thinks we're crazy because they are unwilling to do the math. In fact, they're incapable of doing the math. They don't have the courage, really. to do the math. They don't want to hear about any bad news because it would interfere with their visions of financial wealth and hot babes giving them blowjobs in cars and what have you. That kind of lifestyle that was Leonardo DiCaprio's character on what was that Wall Street movie that he did recently? I forgot the name of it, but that's the kind of lifestyle that these people seek. And so they don't want to hear sobering real news like, hey, by the way, your pyramid of debt is unsustainable. National debt spending to the tune of $20 trillion plus is unsustainable, and it will eventually collapse. In other words, the nation, the United States of America, will default at some point or hyperinflate in an attempt to avoid default. Either way, you're screwed. There will have to be a currency turn-in at some point, or perhaps the country will just abandon the dollar and replace it with something else at some point. The thing is, we don't know when these things will happen, and one of the things that this movie, The Big Short, depicts is that these characters, these real people who had made these investment decisions, they thought it was going to collapse much sooner than it did, and so it was quite a tormenting waiting it out period for a couple of years for these people to actually get paid on their investments. But they got paid sometimes 20 to 1. For every $1 million they invested in betting against the housing debt market, they received $20 million in revenues. But they had to wait a very long time, much longer than they thought they would have to. And so the lesson from that is that this global government banking fascist system is so criminal and so corrupt that they will do everything, including breaking the law, to prevent the system from crumbling. So they can pull out a lot of stops and pull a lot of strings to keep that going longer than you probably think they could. That's another big takeaway from this. All right, this is Mike Adams, the Health Ranger, healthrangerreport.com. I'll return with the next section of this audio here with 15 things you must do to survive 2016 and beyond. Welcome back. This is part 2 of 15 things you must do to survive 2016 and beyond. In the previous segment, I covered a little bit about the movie The Big Short and the takeaway aha moments from that, including the idea that the system, every system that is headed for collapse will never warn you or me that the collapse is imminent. So collapses will happen suddenly and without warning. And one reason they will do so is because governments and banking systems, being the criminal fascist regimes that they are globally, they will all conspire to commit as much fraud and criminality as necessary to keep their systems going as long as possible and delay the collapse to the very last hour of the very last day that they can get away with it. And because of that, when it does collapse, it will collapse with such velocity and ferocity that it will be absolutely devastating, and it will be global. So remember, everywhere across the world, governments and banks do not want to allow corrections in the market. The whole idea of a so-called free market is that corrections must be allowed to take place so that money that is used in an irresponsible or unintelligent way, in other words, making bad bets, such as in low-grade home mortgage debt, receives a sharp correction from the reality of the laws of economics and supply and demand and profits and losses and so on. The whole point of the free market is to be a check, checks and balances against fiscal insanity. And if you don't allow the market to operate with free market principles, then what you really have is a communism type of central planning economy where the government is making decisions or setting prices or setting artificial risk numbers on different debt vehicles and so on. And from that, you get poverty, you get collapse, you get Venezuela. Frankly, if you want to see what happens when central governments plan the economy and plan the investments, you get Venezuela. Long food lines, food shortages, massive widespread poverty, a complete wipeout of the middle class, a tyranny, a totalitarian police state regime running everything. That's what you get. The free market, in fact, is the best weapon against tyranny if you allow the free market to operate, which is not what we have operating in America today. We have a banking cartel. We have government working its tentacles into every sector of the economy and forcing businesses to make irrational decisions against their own interests in order to comply with government rules and regulations and so on. So we don't have a free market operating in America today. If it were really a free market, it would lift more people out of poverty. It would create more jobs. It would create more innovation and investment opportunities. It would create a bigger, more wealthy middle class, by the way. And that's why, of course, the Democrats in particular hate a free market. They don't want a free market. They want a market that keeps as many voters as possible in a state of lifelong poverty, so they will vote for more Democrats and more handouts and more entitlements. That's why Democrats hate free market economics, by the way. So, what does this have to do with the 15 things you must do to survive 2016 and beyond? Well, this is all prelude to that list. I'll get to it, I promise. But you got to understand the basics of the global economics here and how governments operate, how banks operate, and how they are planning to royally screw you and take every last damn penny that you ever earned. They're going to confiscate it. They're going to take it. They've already passed the laws allowing them to do so. They've got the bail-in laws where if the bank is in financial trouble, they can just seize your deposits. Yep. Count them as theirs. They just take them out of your pile and put them in their pile. Ha ha. Suddenly, we're solvent again. This is what banks are allowed to do. And the FDIC is a total joke. You think your bank deposits are insured for what, $250,000, right? That's what you think? Forget it. In a systemic failure scenario, there will be so many claims against the FDIC that it too will go bankrupt and be totally insolvent, and it will have to be bailed out too, just like all the banks. And the question becomes just, who's going to bail out the federal government when all this hits the fan? Is China going to bail out America? I doubt it. China wants its own gold-backed currency, and it's working toward that. So if you're going to survive in 2016 and beyond, you need to have a realistic adult view of the world. A child view of the world is the Disneyland view. Everything's fine. Oh, yes, the government cares about you. They're planning for you. The world is a safe space. You can be pampered and you have a bright future and everyone's a winner. This is the Disneyland view of the world. And unfortunately, it is now extended to college-aged kids across America who are still in the pampered Disneyland phase of development, I guess, or lack of development. So they're in college and they're still talking about safe spaces and, I don't know, watching cartoons or whatever. But you need to think of the world from an adult perspective, obviously. You probably already do if you're listening to this. Which means that you understand the system is being engineered to royally screw you. When the massive defaults come, they're going to take your savings. They're going to take everything that you have that's denominated in dollars, because the dollar itself is going to crash and burn and be replaced with something else. Now, if you've never lived outside of the country of America, let's say, then you probably don't really have a good perspective on this. I lived in Ecuador for 2 years, and one of the things that I did in Ecuador is I went to visit the Ecuadorian Central Bank. They actually give tours. And one of the most amazing things about Ecuador is its economic history of, guess what? Hyperinflation, currency default. And they switched to the U.S. dollar, by the way, after their last hyperinflation event, which I think was right around 1997 in long-term capital management, or maybe it was 99. It was somewhere in the 90s. And during that time, the government, of course, was printing money like mad, hyperinflation, and the value of the dollars, or I'm sorry, they weren't dollars, they were reals or something, but the value of the currency that people held vanished right before their very eyes. So even as you're holding the dollars in your hand, they can steal the value from you. And this is what 90%, maybe 95% of Americans have no clue about, because they're so uneducated. They're so economically retarded that they don't understand how money works and what gives money value. They think if you have a $100 bill in your hand, you got $100. No one can take it from you unless they take the bill. Not true at all. They can devalue it by printing other $100 bills, making your $100 bill totally worthless, or approaching worthlessness, let's say. So this is what happened in Ecuador. And this has happened in Argentina. And this has happened in Weimar, Germany. This has happened over and over and over again throughout human history. It's the most predictable cycle throughout human history, the history of ancient Rome and Renaissance Europe and France and Germany. And it's coming soon, to modern China as well. It's a bubble and it's a collapse, and it's a new currency to replace the old currency, and the people get screwed every single time. Usually people lose 90+% of everything that they have in savings. So imagine that. Maybe you're living on a pension. Maybe you have money in the stock market. Maybe you have money in a savings account because you think you're smart. I have it in cash. I'm not risking it in the stock market. Well, if the banking system collapses, it doesn't matter that you have it in a savings account. They're going to take it. Or if the currency collapses, which is also inevitable someday, you're going to lose at least 90+%, maybe 99% of the value in the forced currency exchange program that the government will mandate at gunpoint. Yes, isn't that lovely? So you're going to lose your pension. You're going to lose your stock market investments. You're going to lose your bonds. You're going to lose your treasury bill investments. You're going to lose your bank savings and checking account. All this value will evaporate overnight. You might ask yourself, well, what can you do then to protect yourself from that? And the answer is tangibles. Own things that are real as a buffer against the financial collapse that's coming. What's real? What has real value? Well, tangibles include things like land, buildings, a nice building in a nice commercial area of town or a neighborhood, whatever. Buildings have value. Real estate has value. Land has real value. I like land because it's hard for them to take it away from you. I mean, yeah, they can declare eminent domain, but that's not going to hit you with great frequency. Also, gold and silver, of course. All of the precious metals are tangibles. They have real value. Same thing with ammunition. In fact, in a collapse, ammunition's value will skyrocket. That's why right now I'm still buying 22 long rifle rounds. They used to be 5 cents each, and now you can get them for a bargain sometimes at 10 cents each. But right after the Sandy Hook shooting, they were 25 cents a round. And probably after a collapse, you'll be paying $1. Who knows? I mean, you can't even denominate it in a dollar currency anymore because the dollars are worthless. Maybe one day you'll pay $10 for one round of 22 LR ammo, which used to be a nickel. Like 2 years ago, it was a nickel. So it's hard to say. But tangibles are your insurance. You see, a lot of people buy a lot of insurance, but they're buying it from institutions that are going to go broke. Will your insurance company survive a global financial collapse? I doubt it. I mean, if the banks go under and if governments go under, how's your insurance company going to stay in business and stay solvent? Doesn't your insurance company have its deposits held in the banks that are going to collapse? Yes. So your insurance company is really no insurance at all in a global systemic debt collapse scenario. So real insurance is gold and silver, ammunition, land, farmland, an old tractor that still runs with a diesel engine. That's real insurance, if you ask me. All right, I'll continue this in part 3. Stay with me. This is Mike Adams, the Health Ranger, healthrangerreport.com. Some of the best preparedness advice you're going to get all year. So stay tuned. All right, and we're back. Part 3 here of the 15 things you must do to survive 2016 and beyond. I'm already into part 3, and I haven't even gotten to point 1 yet. Imagine that. Because I've been covering the basics here, all the stuff you need to know ahead of time. But I think I've got all that out of the way in parts 1 and 2. If you missed those, go to healthrangerreport.com. And by the way, I keep neglecting to mention, I got to plug my Ranger Gear website. This is all brought to you by rangergear.com. That's my new line of preparedness and survival hardware. It's awesome gear. I had this multifunction shovel out in the forest the other day. I was filming it to demonstrate the fire starting device. It was a wet day. It had just rained on everything, but I still found some like seed pods and some brown grass with seeds on it. I squished it up into a bunch, and I got out the fire starter, and I scraped it with the knife edge that's part of the shovel. And I scraped some of the magnesium off the fire starter into that bunch, and then I struck it again at the right angle with the right pressure, and after about 4 or 5 strikes, boom, it burst into flame. And so I had a fire, and that was really cool. I got it all on camera. I'll have a video out there. But that's cool. I make survival gear that really works, and then I go demonstrate it for you. You might need that one of these days. If you find yourself homeless after the global debt collapse takes place and the banks have stolen all your money and have stolen your home, kicked you out on the street, maybe at the very least you'll have the Ranger Gear survival shovel with a fire starter, and you can. Now, I hope it doesn't get that bad for you. I hope you keep your home. If you're smart, you will. In fact, if you listen to the rest of this list, 15 things you must do to survive, then you should be able to actually do very, very well. I don't want anyone to lose their home. But a lot of people will. That's just the reality of what's coming. All right, so let's get into it then, the actual list. We have to start with number 1. And that is learn how to grow your own food. You know, food is a tangible thing too, obviously, and you need food, clearly, unless you're on a sunshine diet, sun gazing for your calories. I don't know. Do you think that Indian dude really does that? I don't know. You're probably going to need some calories, to live. So you better learn how to grow some of your own food. I invented the Food Rising Mini Farm Grow Box that you can find at foodrising.org. If you want to download those plans and make one of those, they're really awesome food grow systems. I'm using them right now. I'm actually trying to look out there. I guess I've got about a dozen, maybe 16 boxes growing right now, bins of different lettuce and beet greens and arugula, basil, some other herbs, cilantro. I'm growing a lot of cilantro because I love that. It grows in these boxes so easily. It's totally hands-off, well, almost totally hands-off. There's no electricity, no pumps, no moving parts, nothing. It's just super easy, self-watering systems, foodrising.org. So learn how to grow your own food, because right now in Venezuela, for example, the people that can grow their own food, well, they're like the kings of the kingdom, They've got stuff to barter with everybody. Here, I'll trade you tomatoes for your toilet paper. And people who have nothing to barter are screwed. They're standing in line for 12 hours a day at the Venezuelan supermarkets just to have their biometrics read by the iris scanners at the grocery store. So the government makes sure that you don't buy more than your allotted quota for the day as a Venezuelan citizen. How would you love that? You get the police state and the biometric scanning and the food shortage all at once. Yeah, it's like a package deal. They should call it the Obama package, because that's probably what's coming to America soon if he continues to exercise his executive privilege. That's another topic. All right, so that's number 1, learn how to grow your own food. Number 2, store enough food and water to survive a short-term crisis. And by short-term, I mean like, I don't know, at least 30 days, probably 60 to 90 is better. If you don't know how much water you need for that, you need 4 gallons per person per day. That's how much water you actually need. That's a lot of water. So if you try to store water for a month, it's 120 gallons per person. I know, it's a lot of water. And it might not fit in your apartment. So get out of the city if you can, and you'll have some space to store some water. In fact, if you get out in the country, you can set up a rainwater collection system and get all your water for free. And it's the best water that there is, by the way. Better than city water, better than well water. Grows plants, and it's great for showering, too. All right, so make sure you store enough. Now, remember that if you follow number 1 here, you learn how to grow your own food. But you still need to store some food to get you started, because if you start growing food today, you're not going to be able to harvest that for, well, depending on what you're growing, maybe 120 days for certain crops. Now, you can have sprouts in 2 days, but I don't think you can live on sprouts forever. So you want to grow some other vegetables, right? And some simple fruits like strawberries. So to have time to get all that started, you need to store enough food and water to get by. Okay, point number 3 here. Have a bug out route and a bug out bag ready to go. And this is especially true if you live in the city. If you're in the city, you're in the suicide zone. You're at zombie central there in your city. Like, that's where all the epidemics are going to spread. That's where all the chaos, the social chaos is going to happen. That's where the martial law is going to be really strictly enforced. That's where the people who don't have their food stamps are going to freak out and go crazy and try to steal food and loot everybody's homes. The cities are the death zones. They're the death traps of every society in a collapse. So you want to get out of the city as soon as possible, preferably before it all hits the fan. But in any case, have a bug out route and a bug out bag. And the big mistake that a lot of people make who are not into prepping is they think they're going to be able to drive down the highway and get out of town. Yeah, I'm just going to take, I-35 or I-10 or whatever. And, I'm going to take the 405 out of town. Yeah, really? You and 5 million other people are going to be all stranded on that same highway, stuck in bumper-to-bumper traffic with nowhere to go. You don't have your food and water because you didn't have your bug-out bag. You have no means of self-defense. You're low on gasoline. Cash is worthless. Credit cards don't work. What are you going to do now? So it's good to have a bug-out route that does not rely on the highway system. And yes, that means motocross bike or bicycle, horseback or foot, or maybe you can hoverboard your way out of town if you're lucky. I doubt it, though. So have a bug-out route that you can hike on foot. Stay away from the roads. Stay away from the checkpoints. Stay away from the gangbangers. Stay away from the martial law. All that. Get out of town on foot. All right, number 4. This is very important. Acquire a legal firearm and learn how to use it in self-defense. I'm a big advocate of self-defense, especially for women and senior citizens. Because usually a young, healthy male, for example, can somewhat fend for himself physically, fist fights and that kind of thing. But it is especially women and senior citizens who benefit from having a firearm because it equalizes them against everybody else. You could have a 300-pound attacker coming at you. A UFC fighter who weighs 300 pounds and wants to steal your loot, and if you have a firearm, you can be a 110-pound little old lady, with a revolver, and suddenly you have equal ground with this 300-pound MMA fighter. So guns are the great equalizers. They give power to people who don't have the physical fighting skills to defend themselves against aggressors. So it's important that you acquire a firearm now, ahead of time, before Obama takes away the Second Amendment right to even own a firearm. Well, I guess he can try, but probably not going to succeed. Anyway, he's going to put more restrictions on it. So it's good to get one now, and even more importantly, learn how to use it in self-defense. I can't tell you how many people own guns and they don't know how to use them. They don't even know how to rack the slide. They don't know how to clear a jam. They don't know how to clean the thing. They've never had the slide off of their pistol. They don't know how to remove the firing pin, clean the trigger, nothing. Totally clueless. What's the point of having a gun if you don't even know how to use it or even clean it? What are you going to do? Use it once, throw it away, and buy a new one? Is it a disposable $500 Glock? No. You better learn the basics, It's not that difficult. It takes 5 minutes to clean it. And by the way, yes, I recommend a Glock. In fact, I'll tell you, I recommend a Glock 19. It's 9mm, great for women and men alike, fits in everybody's hands. It's a double-stack magazine, holds plenty of rounds, very easy to control, readily available parts, readily available ammo. It can be concealed, and yet it's got good enough accuracy for, most everyday kind of combat situations. So Glock 19 is my choice. I hate those firearms with the pistols with thumb safeties. Pistols with thumb safeties suck and will get you killed. Don't buy them. Don't use them. They're horrible. Glocks don't have thumb safeties. They have trigger safeties that are passive safeties that are much, much better and don't require you to remember to flip a switch in the middle of a fight to the death. So anyway, Glock 19, just remember that. If you're going to go get a firearm, make sure it's legal, first of all, and then go get a Glock 19 if you don't already have one. Okay, number five. Whew, man, we're running out of time here. I got to move along. Number 5 is diversify your investments out of the stock market and the dollar. And I've already talked about most of this. Excuse me. Owning tangibles like farmland and gold and silver and ammo and things like that, that's really, really crucial. You will lose everything that's in the bank, or almost everything, in a global systemic debt collapse scenario. And we don't know when that's going to happen. It could be 10 minutes away or 10 years away. It's hard to say. Or maybe they'll stave it off forever. Who knows? But if it does happen, you're going to lose everything in the banking system and in the currency of your nation, the dollar, for example. So you've got to diversify out of that so that you have things that still exist even if the money system collapses. I think it's a good idea to invest in 1970s era John Deere diesel tractors. And I own one myself that I love this machine. It's a work of art. And you can use it to turn farmland into food. Imagine that, actually doing something real in the real world instead of just posting on Facebook all day long. All right, this is the end of part 3. I'm going to continue this list in part 4. You're listening to the Health Ranger Report at healthrangerreport.com, and I'll continue this list in part 4. Catch you there. All right, this is part 4. Welcome to part 4 of 15 things you must do to survive 2016 and beyond. I haven't welcomed you to 2016 yet, but that's because I got here the same time you did, so we could welcome each other. We're both in the present. Imagine that. Point number 6, we made it through 5 points in the last section 3, and if you didn't catch section 3, go to healthrangerreport.com. That's where all my podcasts are stored, archived. But point number 6 here is to stockpile some cash. Now, I realize that cash might become worthless based on what's happening, global debt collapse, currency collapse, hyperinflation, so on and so forth. But there may be scenarios where cash is still good. In fact, a lot of them are like that. For example, if there's an EMP attack and it takes down the power grid, cash will probably still be very useful in that kind of a scenario. Or if there's an active war, Russia nukes Chicago, or North Korea actually figures out how to launch a rocket and then nuke, LA or something, God forbid, cash would still be useful. So it's good to stockpile some cash, knowing that ATMs are not going to work, probably following a bunch of nuclear bombs. Right? Because, or EMP or grid down, solar flare could take down the power grid. And so your ATM is probably not going to function. And it's good to have some cash. So stockpile a little bit of cash, not so much that you would lose a fortune if your house burned down, but enough to get you by if the banking system is temporarily unavailable. At the same time, as I mentioned in the last segment, you got to have gold and silver too. Real money, actual real precious metal. Cash is just based on faith. And if that faith evaporates, the cash is worthless. So it might be useful in certain scenarios, but the big long-term play is to get your money into things like gold and silver and land. Things like land always has value, especially land that has water on it or good soil, able to grow food, that kind of thing. How about an orchard? That's worth something. All right, point number 7. This one is one of my favorites. Learn how to grow and make your own medicine. You can actually grow your own medicine by growing essential oils. You can buy a simple distillation system that just uses heat, and some glassware to produce essential oils from herbs that you grow yourself. For example, you can produce amazing medicine in the form of oregano oil by growing your own oregano and distilling the oil. And oregano can be used to fight stomach bugs, food poisoning. It can be used topically to help eliminate moles and certain skin conditions and skin tags and things like that. It destroys fungus on feet. It's a toenail fungus can't survive oregano. There's all kinds of things that you can use oregano for. Probably even ringworm, come to think of it. All kinds of things. Anyway, you can grow your own medicine, and I encourage you to do so. Growing herbs is a great way to do that. Some other types of, it's easy to grow, your own basil, holy basil, peppermint, things like that, digestive aids. You can literally grow and make your own medicine, so I encourage you to do so. You can grow ginger and garlic, of course. That's very easy to grow. All right, point number 8. This is out of the 15 things you must do to survive 2016 and beyond. I'm hearing my chickens in the background. Let me check on them. How you doing, chickie chicks? Hey there. Do you hear them in the background? I'm actually raising chickens, which isn't on my list, but it should be. It's part of the food self-reliance. Here, let me pick one up. See if it'll talk to you. Oh, she's kind of freaking out. Hello. She's doing all right. Yeah, I'm keeping them warm. 37 degrees Celsius. In any case, sorry about that interruption, but I actually do raise chickens. I have a commercial egg incubator, and I raise a lot of chickens and produce a lot of eggs. And I've learned a lot about taking care of chickens and being more self-reliant with my food because of that. And anyway, sorry about that distraction. Maybe the chickens will stay quiet for now. All right, point number 8 is to get out of the city. I've already mentioned this, but I'll go over it briefly. The key is to get out of the high population density areas. You've got to get to a lower population density area. I've been saying this for years, and one of these days it's going to become so blatantly obvious to the people who are in the cities. They're going to wake up and say, maybe we shouldn't have stayed. Maybe we should have listened to the health ranger and got out to the country, because now the food line is 5 miles long and there's martial law and there's a viral epidemic that was released in the city by the CDC, and they're having gunpoint vaccines now for everybody and roadblocks so you can't leave. Maybe we should have got out of the city. I don't know if that scenario is actually going to happen, but it's one of the possible scenarios. So who knows? Anyway, get out of the city while you still can. Country life is very rewarding. It's actually a higher quality life. The air quality is better. The people quality are better, in my opinion. You learn more. You're more physically fit. You have more activity, physical activity. It's great. I love country living. It's more self-reliant, and you can outlast lots and lots of things that will destroy cities. For example, there's not a lot of crazed zombie, former food stamp people running around the countryside looking for food in a collapse. But in the cities, you've got, 47, 48 million people living on food stamps right now. The day that stops, you're going to have 48 million zombies, running around looking for food. Cheetos. They're going to be breaking in your windows and taking Campbell's soup out of the cupboard because they mistakenly think that's food. They don't even know what food is. They use food stamps to buy Oreos, right? Which is why they have so much diabetes too. But nevertheless, next topic. Number 9, prepare for a grid down scenario. By grid down, we mean the power grid goes down in your region. Now, there are 3 power grids in the United States: the Western grid, Eastern grid, and the Texas grid. It's no coincidence that I live in Texas. It has its own grid, has its own energy supply. Texas grid is the most likely grid to stay up. Now, if you're not in Texas, if you're in Manhattan Island, for example, you're at high risk of a grid down scenario, which would, of course, deprive you of the ability to air condition your home or heat your home or even flush your toilet because all the water pressure pumps are run on electricity. You'll have some water pressure for a little while, but after the first few million flushes across the city, there's no more water pressure. Your cell phones won't be able to be recharged, but it hardly matters because the cell phone towers will probably run out of energy too. You've got emergency services. They've got backup power systems, but those are limited in the number of hours they can operate. The internet will be down, which means you can't go to social media to find out what you're supposed to do because your Facebook friends are all geniuses, right? I thought so. So what do? Well, in a grid down scenario, you need to get back to the basics. You need to already have plans for food, water, shelter. How do you keep yourself warm if it's in the winter or cool in the summer? And you need to have your bug out bag, your bug out plan if you need to get out. You better have backup supplies of everything ready to go. So prepare for the grid down scenario. It might happen. And by the way, Ted Koppel wrote a book on this called Lights Out. Yes, the Ted Koppel. What was it, ABC journalist or was it CBS? They're all the same. I don't know. He was one of the big mainstream media guys. He wrote a book called Lights Out, and his contention is that it's primarily a cybersecurity risk that he believes China or Iran or North Korea or other hackers from these various possibly enemy nations could take out the power grid regionally, if not nationally, in the United States. It's a fascinating book. I recommend it. Lights Out is the name of it. And he interviewed former Homeland Security officials who said, yeah, we have a plan. Yeah, we stored food. And Ted was like, how much food did you store for New York? And the guy's like, we stored like 1 million meals. And Ted's like, there's like 9 million people in New York. And the Homeland Security guy's like, well, they'll all get breakfast, or something like. Obviously, I'm paraphrasing, but it was similarly hilarious to read that book and read some of the interviews that Ted Koppel did with people. Anyway, grid down. Point number 10: acquire physical reference books on medicine, permaculture, firearms repair, and basic country living skills. You got that? This is one that you might not have expected to be on this list, but it's an important one. This is something that I've done. I purchase a lot of physical reference books. I put them on the shelf. I don't read them. I don't need to read them, but I realize that in a grid down scenario, your favorite online search engine won't work. So goodgopher.com, hopefully that's the search engine you're using. Some people still use Google if they want bad information. But if you want more accurate information from the alternative media, go to goodgopher.com. But in any case, it won't matter if the grid's down. Your whole online life just vanishes. No more Twitter, no more Facebook. Gosh, life might actually not be depressing anymore for you, right? You could actually live in the real world, pick dandelions, who knows, or plant tomatoes, raise chickens like I do. Check the chicken incubator. Maybe someone's ready to hatch. You never know. But get these physical reference books on herbs and medicine and ditch medicine. There's ditch dentistry, like emergency dentistry, emergency medicine, first aid, EMT course books, anatomy, physiology, a lot of medical reference books that you can get that will be very, very helpful. But also, firearms repair, basic country skills, gardening skills, soil composting, how to build a wine cellar, a lot of books like that. How to clone plants, for example. Do you know how to clone plants? If you don't, you need a book. I already know how, but if you don't know how to clone plants, get a book. Or graft plants is what I mean. Grafting. Anyway, we'll come back with point number 11 after this break. This is the Health Ranger Report, 15 things you must do to survive 2016 and beyond. We've made it all the way to point number 10. I'll try to finish the last 5 in the next segment. If you've missed any of the previous segments, check them at healthrangerreport.com. And this is all brought to you by rangergear.com, my new line of preparedness and survival products. Got that in there. rangergear.com. I'll be back. All right, and we're back with the final and 5th segment of 15 things you must do to survive 2016 and beyond. I promise to finish this list in this next 12 minutes. Point number 11 here is probably an unexpected one. identify people around you who refuse to prepare because they are likely to become a threat. Now, before you go crazy, thinking that we're not sharing and caring and compassionate, here's my strategy on this. Number one, help as many people as you can. You got to have compassion. You got to be able to help others in need. But in a total collapse scenario, you got to also make sure that you are healthy first, because you can't help others if you're a victim. You know, if you're wounded or if you're starving, how are you going to help others? So you need to make sure that you take care of your ability to stay healthy so that you can help others. And that means you need to identify people around you who are going to be a total drag on your survival supplies, people who are going to be a liability rather than helpful. It's good to know in advance who they are so you can plan accordingly. Now, maybe you still can find a way to help them at some point, but you need to make sure that you can survive their freak out, panic period, because they will freak out and panic. You know, people who don't prepare, anti-preppers, we call them, you know, they're like begging to win the Darwin Award. They're the most short-sighted idiots on the planet. If not for artificial food, that probably wouldn't even be alive to begin with. And they will, you know, they can't wait to die in a collapse, and they want to take you with them, basically, is how they operate. So you want to make sure they don't drag you down into their lack of preparedness and freak out crisis response. If you're prepared, no crisis is really that much of an emergency, is it? You can handle it. All right, number 12. Enhance your home security using physical devices like door jams and perimeter alerts, and perhaps strengthening the locks on your windows, or even just locking them for a change if you don't lock them. This is good advice because the items that you'll need to enhance your home security might be difficult to get in a collapse, right? I mean, what if Amazon.com goes down, God forbid, and you can't get Prime shipping anymore on your door jams, and you can't select $3.99 next day delivery on the door jam? What are you going to do? You're going to have to make your own door jam out of wood, and you don't have a wood shop, so you're kind of screwed. So get these things in advance. I mean, literally just a door jam can be a big help. It prevents people from kicking your door in as easily. And when they try to kick it in, you hear the first couple of kicks, you grab your AR-15 or your Mossberg 12 gauge or Benelli. I actually like a Benelli better. You grab your auto-loading Benelli 12 gauge filled with double-aught steel shot in a 3-inch Magnum cartridge, and you go to town on whoever's trying to kick in your door. No, maybe you should identify your target first. I will do firearms training on another course. But seriously, if you got a bunch of zombies trying to come in and take your life, or steal your food, or harm your family, or burn your house down, you need, it's good to have some home security. Beef up your windows, beef up your doors, wedge a 2x4 in between your sliding glass doors, to prevent them from being opened easily from the outside. Things like that. Boost your home security. Okay. Number 13. Oh, this is a big one. Transition off all pharmaceuticals if you can, under the guidance of a qualified naturopath or physician or whoever can help you do that. Now, I know you might need some medications on an ongoing basis depending on your personal health challenges. I understand that. But what I'm saying is get off the medications that are optional because they may not be available in a collapse. Now, for those of you who are insulin dependent, this is a very difficult situation. There's no herb that replaces insulin. It just doesn't exist. You can, however, make lifestyle changes to reduce your insulin dependence quite dramatically. You can stop eating refined liquid sugars, for example, put down the Pepsi, and that will reduce your insulin need quite dramatically. So, there are a lot of things that you can do. And by the way, type 2 diabetes is reversible. So if you are diabetic right now, type 2, you can change your life, you can change your diet, and you can actually reverse and cure type 2 diabetes simply by changing what you eat and how much you exercise, getting more minerals into your diet, and so on. I don't have the space and time here to tell you exactly how to do that, but if you search naturalnews.com for reversing diabetes, you'll find all kinds of just a wealth of information there on how to do that. For other pharmaceuticals, if you're on blood pressure meds or statin drugs or whatever, a lot of those are total BS anyway, complete fraud. Statin drugs are a great example. They accelerate aging. They cause chronic fatigue of your muscle system. They also cause dementia-like symptoms in your brain. Statin drugs are a big scam. You should probably get off those anyway. You can accomplish improved cardiovascular health through dietary choices, dietary supplements of omega-3s, things like that, plus some regular exercise. It's not that difficult. But get off all the pharmaceuticals you can. And by the way, point number 14 is if you are addicted to anything like cigarettes, coffee, crack, I don't know what you, cocaine, heroin, meth, whatever you're addicted to, eliminate those addictions. This is a good time to eliminate the addictions. You do not want to be an addict in a collapse. Believe me, that is the last thing you want to be. And actually, I'm going to talk more about this point. But let me get to point number 15, wrap this up, and then I'll come back to this. Point number 15. Yay, we made it to the end. We made it to 15. And of course, there's a lot more than 15 here, but this is just the first 15 that came to mind. Safely store sufficient fuel for bugging out. So if you do have to get out of town, don't depend on gas stations being open. Now, I emphasize the word safely because there are a lot of people out there who will burn their garages down by storing gasoline improperly, and it leaks and it starts a fire, and poof, you're calling 911. And you're maybe getting charged with arson or something. Who knows? Who knows? Gasoline is an accelerant, according to the fire marshals, right? So safely store sufficient fuel. Make sure you do so legally in compliance with the fire codes of your city or county. And if you're in an apartment building, you probably shouldn't be stockpiling 20 gallons of gas in your apartment, okay? Just to be clear. This is what I like diesel vehicles for a lot of reasons, but one of them is because the fuel stores longer and it stores more safely. The flash point of diesel is much, much higher than gasoline, meaning that you have to apply a lot more heat to diesel to make it combust. In other words, it's safer to store. All right, let's get back to number 14 here because I want to talk more about these addictions that people have. A lot of people have a lot of addictions to a lot of substances. And again, cigarettes, coffee, alcohol, those are the legal ones. And then, of course, you have, I don't know, everything from marijuana, pot to heroin, meth, cocaine, crack. I don't know what else is out. Ecstasy pills. Sorry, I'm not up to speed on the drug scene. Okay, it's not my thing. But I know there are a lot of addicts out there, and addicts. You've really only got two strategies here. Number one, you can try to stockpile a bunch of stuff that you think you're going to need for a collapse. Like, I don't know, load up on cigarettes and load up on coffee. They're actually pretty darn good barter items. Load up on alcohol. You know, you can swap vodka for anything in a collapse, right? So you can front load on all this stuff, but you're going to have to break your addiction at some point because you're going to run out. Now, maybe you don't have the willpower or dedication or whatever it takes to break the addiction now. So you just figure, well, you know, if it all hits the fan and I run out of cigarettes, that's when I'll quit. Well, that's fine. If that's your strategy, you know, it's probably going to work because you're out of cigarettes. So maybe that's your strategy. That's fine. But if you want to have an easier time, maybe you could ease off of it beforehand, or I don't know, maybe stockpile some vaping e-cigarettes or nicotine gum or whatever works for you. But my point is, get off the addictions ahead of time as much as possible. Now, if you're addicted to illicit substances such as heroin, well, I don't know what you're going to do. I don't know. It's probably not a good idea to try to stockpile that stuff. You might binge on it. I don't know what the shelf life is of heroin. Maybe it goes bad after 3 months. I mean, probably it's bad the day you buy it, come to think of it, the way they cook that stuff up these days. But it would be good to not enter a collapse with a heroin addiction because you're going to put your life at risk probably trying to break into pharmacies, and everybody else is too, because there's a bunch of other addicts out there, and they're trying to beat you to it because they're freaking out and they're shaking, and they brought all their guns with them too, because not only are they heroin addicts, but they have AK-47s with them too, and you know, they're shaking and firing off rounds in every direction, so it's probably not a safe environment. to be trying to score some methadone or whatever you're onto in your local pharmacy. Do pharmacies even stock methadone? I have no idea. Anyway, pharmacies are going to be rated for all the prescription painkiller drugs. Like what are they? I'm trying to think. I'm trying to think of the names. Again, this is not not my area of expertise, so I don't take any prescriptions at all, none whatsoever. But you can imagine that the amphetamines are going to go quickly, the painkillers, the antibiotics, the insulin, all that stuff. Pharmacies are going to be war zones, absolute war zones. And if you're a pharmacist, you should have a bug out plan like with you at all times. If it hits the fan, get the hell out of the pharmacy because it's going to be a freaking war zone. Which is just a sad commentary on society that people think they need all these chemicals, by the way, to survive. But that's the way it is. That's the way it is. So anyway, that's the list. Look, we made it through all 15. Kind of a group effort there, so I appreciate your hanging in there and listening to the whole list. I hope you found this list valuable. Obviously, as a disclaimer, I can't give you actual financial advice. I'm not your financial advisor. And also, I'm not your doctor. I'm not your medical advisor. You got to make your own decisions based on your own specific needs and risks. Risk analyses. This segment is sponsored by rangergear.com, so please check that out if you found value in this. I've applied the same kind of analysis and intelligence to my line of preparedness and survival products called Ranger Gear. You can find that at rangergear.com. And there's a lot of good stuff there that will also help you survive and probably should be in your bug out bag as well. So thanks for listening. This is Mike Adams, the Health Ranger. Catch my show on talknetwork.com. Again, that's talknetwork.com or healthrangerreport.com, or read my articles if you dare at naturalnews.com. Take care.